I never thought a single text message could change my life, but that's exactly how it started. My name is Alex, and I had been married to Olivia for 7 years. Outwardly, we were a picture-perfect couple. Our friends envied us, our families admired us, and everyone assumed we were inseparable. But appearances are deceiving, and I was about to learn that the woman I had trusted with my entire world had a secret that would shatter everything. It began on a Thursday evening. I had returned from work early, hoping to surprise Olivia with dinner. The apartment was unusually quiet, her car was gone, and her phone lay on the counter. I picked it up, only to see a string of messages that made my stomach drop. Olivia had been seeing someone else, a man named Ryan. Not just a fleeting fling, but a full-blown affair that had been going on for months. The audacity stunned me. The man had no idea about my profession, no clue that I wasn't someone who could be deceived easily. Rage, disbelief, and heartbreak collided inside me. I didn't shout, I didn't cry. I just stared at the messages, scrolling through every detail of their hidden world. He called her my escape, she called him my thrill, and they planned meetings while I was at work. Every message was a dagger, but strangely, I felt an eerie calm settle over me. This wasn't the moment to lose control. This was the moment to act with precision, with strategy, with moral justice. I didn't confront her immediately. Instead, I did what I always do in situations that require clarity. I observed, I analyzed, and I prepared. The man she was seeing had been careless, leaving traces of his presence, locations, and even times. It didn't take long to piece together his life outside of my wife. And the more I dug, the more I realized how utterly unprepared he was for the consequences that would come. He was arrogant, unaware, and blissfully ignorant, qualities that were about to become his undoing. By that night I had decided on a plan. First, I would expose the betrayal. Not in a fit of rage, not in anger, but in a way that was undeniable. Olivia would be forced to face the truth, and Ryan would learn that the life he thought he had gained through deception was nothing but a fragile illusion. As for me, I would reclaim my life, erase her from it completely, and take the steps necessary to protect my heart. Divorce wasn't just an option. It was the inevitable conclusion of the betrayal she had orchestrated. But before any of that could happen, I needed proof, undeniable evidence that couldn't be denied, ignored, or twisted. I spent the night gathering screenshots, saving locations, and cataloging every interaction they had, making sure that when the confrontation came, there would be no question of the truth. By the time the sun rose, I had everything I needed. Everything. And I was ready to act. The next morning, I didn't wake Olivia with questions or accusations. Instead, I drove straight to Ryan's apartment, my mind sharp, my resolve absolute. I didn't intend to fight, I didn't intend to beg. He had brought this chaos into my life, and now he would face the consequences. When he opened the door, a grin on his face, I didn't hesitate. One punch, clean and precise, and he crumpled to the floor. Shock registered in his eyes, mingled with fear, and I knew immediately that the lesson had landed. This was more than physical. It was a warning, a clear message that betrayal comes with costs far beyond what he had imagined. I didn't stay to see his recovery. I left, walking away from the chaos with a strange sense of satisfaction. The hardest part wasn't confronting him. It was knowing that the woman I had trusted, the woman I had shared my life with, had allowed herself to be complicit in this deception. Olivia was still oblivious to the fact that her world was about to unravel completely. She had underestimated me, underestimated the depth of my resolve, and that miscalculation would define everything that followed. When I returned home, I confronted her calmly. No shouting, no pleading, no theatrics. I simply laid out the evidence, messages, locations, details she could no longer deny. Her face went pale, a mixture of guilt, fear, and disbelief crossing her features. She tried to explain, to justify, to rationalize, but the words fell flat. In that moment I realized something I had known deep down. Trust, once broken, cannot simply be rebuilt. Her betrayal had crossed a line, not just morally but emotionally, irrevocably. I left her in the living room, stunned, and called her parents. They were horrified, hurt, but ultimately grateful that the truth had been exposed. Olivia had shielded herself with lies for too long, and now the consequences were fully visible. For me, there was no discussion, no reconciliation. Divorce was no longer a threat. It was the certainty. Ghosting her from this point wasn't cruelty. It was self-preservation. The woman I had loved, the life I had envisioned, was gone. That night, I packed the essentials and left our shared apartment for the final time. Every item I touched reminded me of the trust she had destroyed, but also of the life I would now reclaim. I didn't need drama, tears, or excuses, only distance. She would realize in time that the life she had chosen came at the cost of the man she had taken for granted. I was gone, leaving only evidence, clarity, and an undeniable lesson that betrayal never remains hidden forever. I didn't look back as I drove away that night. The streets blurred under the headlights, each mile a step further from a life built on lies. I felt a mix of exhaustion, grief, and an odd sense of liberation. Olivia's betrayal had cut deep, but leaving without confrontation, without lingering in the rubble, gave me control over my own narrative. She had chosen her deception, I chose my freedom. Over the next few days I stayed off the grid. No calls, no messages, no social media. I wanted to exist in the silence, away from the reminders of what had been. My interactions with Olivia ended the moment I walked out the door, and the silence was both terrifying and healing. I knew she would eventually reach out, plead, perhaps even manipulate, but I refused to engage. Ghosting wasn't cruelty, it was survival. She had weaponized intimacy, trust, and familiarity, and now the only safe response was disappearance. In the meantime, I filed for divorce. It wasn't a decision made in anger. It was a calculated, rational step to reclaim my life legally and emotionally. The paperwork, the proceedings, all of it was a formal acknowledgement that the marriage had ended long before the ink hit the court papers. There was no reconciliation, no second chances, no room for her lies to linger. It was final, and for the first time in months I felt clarity. Betrayal can devastate, but it also illuminates what must be left behind to survive. Weeks passed, and life continued outside the shadow of her lies. I focused on work, friends, and rebuilding routines that had been disrupted by the emotional turbulence she caused. Her name faded from daily thought, replaced by plans, ambitions, and the quiet joy of autonomy. Occasionally, I imagined her realizing the magnitude of her actions, the ruined connections, the shattered trust, the man who had walked away without drama or tears. She had believed her deceit was safe, her escape secure, but she underestimated the consequences of crossing a boundary she could never repair. Months later, I finally felt a sense of peace. The pain lingered, of course, like a shadow that visits long after the storm, but it no longer dictated my choices. Olivia and her affair were a chapter closed, a lesson seared into memory. I had confronted the betrayal, exposed the truth, and walked away, not as a victim, but as someone who refused to be defined by her mistakes. The punch, the exposure, the disappearance, the divorce, it was all part of reclaiming my story, my dignity, and my future. Standing at the edge of a new city skyline, I realized something essential. Betrayal destroys trust, but it can also forge strength. Walking away, ghosting her, leaving everything behind, it wasn't cowardice. It was self-preservation, a testament to the understanding that some people are only in your life to teach you what you cannot compromise on. And in leaving, I had gained the one thing she could never take from me, myself.